Hi, I'm back. I'm your fairy godmother, hopefully a little older but wiser. I'm reading from Habitrot, written by Carolyn Emmerich, with special permission by her. Thank you for joining me. In the olden days, when women had to spin yarn day in and day out, there was once a fairy godmother of the spinning wheel. In the borderlands of Scotland and England, her name was Habitrot or Habitrot. And one day she appeared to a young maiden in Selkirkshire, Scotland. Now, this girl was very beautiful, but her mother was forever frustrated with her daughter, for the girl always wanted to be outdoors playing instead of helping with the important chores of the household, like spinning wool into yarn. This worried her mother a great deal because in those days every man wanted a woman who was a very good spinster as his wife. In fact, a hard-working and industrious woman was seen as more attractive than a very beautiful one. So the mother begged and pleaded with her daughter to be more responsible. When that didn't work, she scolded and even beat her. But the girl still refused and went out to play. Finally, the mother had enough. Because the girl was of marrying age, which was quite young in those days, her mother fretted that she would not find a good husband, for no man would marry such a lazy spinster. Losing her patience, the good wife gave her daughter a large amount of lint to spin and a deadline of 3 days to spin 7 skeins of yarn. Here's a girl at the spinning wheel by Catherine D.M. Bywater, 1885. The poor girl saw that her mother was serious this time, so she tried her best, but without much practice, she lacked the skill to spin such a large amount so quickly. Frustrated with how little she finished by the end of the first night, the girl cried herself to sleep. By the second day, she saw how very little she had spun the day before, and what a large amount of lint still remained. Since it was clear that she wasn't going to finish, the girl gave up and went outdoors for a stroll. She wandered across a meadow to a flowery knoll filled with wild roses beside a stream. The girl sat down beside the water, and the weight of her predicament overcame her. Feeling terrible because she did not know how she would spin the lint, the girl buried her face in her hands. As she sat there crying alone, suddenly an old woman appeared. The girl looked over and saw the elderly lady sat down on a rock with a hole bored into it, drawing out her thread in the sunlight. The woman appeared quite ordinary, and the only thing that stood out was that her lips were quite thick and long. The girl greeted the crone and asked her why she was so long-lipped. The old woman replied, "From the spinning thread and wetting my fingers with my mouth over and over, day in and day out for so many years, my honey." The lady seemed pleased with the girl's friendly countenance. But the girl said, "I should be spinning also, but I shall never finish in time. There is no point in trying." The old woman had taken a liking to her, so she replied that she would do the task for the girl. Overjoyed, the girl ran home to retrieve her lint, hurried back to the knoll, and placed it in her new friend's lap. Upon receipt of the pile of lint, the crone's body began to turn to mist until she disappeared completely. With no indication of what the woman's name was or where she would retrieve her yarn, The girl didn't quite know what to do. She wandered around the knoll, and for a bit she fell asleep in the afternoon sun. Suddenly, the maiden startled awake by the sound of a voice. She was shocked to see that it was already evening. The evening star, called Cosline by the Scots, was overhead, and the moon beamed down brightly. She lost herself in the night sky for a moment, but her trance was broken by a sound of a rough voice. The sound seemed to be coming from the hole in the stone, which the old woman had previously been sitting. The girl realized that this rock must be a witch's stone. Peering through the hole, the girl saw a cavern where several old women sat spinning, feeding on Calyuldi stones, small white pebbles found in rivers. The women all had the same disfiguration in their lips due to the many, many years of wetting their fingers as they spun. And then the first old lady spoke up, startling the girl. Little did you know, dearie, that my name is Habitrot, advised the crone as she indicated that the girl's spinning was finished. Habitrot directed another crone, whom she called Scantly Mob, to bundle up the girl's yarn, for it was time to take it home to her mother. Barely containing her elation, the girl began scurrying home. Habitrot soon caught up with her and placed the bundle in her hands. The young maid was so grateful and wished to do something to return the favor. Habitrot insisted that she did not want anything apart from the girl to keep it a secret who had spun her yarn. A Golden Thread by John Strudwick, 1885. When the girl returned home, she saw that her mother had made black puddings called sausters and left them hanging in the kitchen before lying down to rest. The girl was famished with her adventure, so she set her 7 skeins of yarn down and took down a saucer to eat. But she was so hungry after the excitement of the day that she ate another and then another. Before long, she had eaten all 7 saucers. With a full belly, the girl went to bed. The next morning, the girl's mother woke up bright and early while the girl was still asleep. When she went into the kitchen, she saw that her saucers had all been eaten. But then her eyes noted 7 skeins of yarn lying on the table. The yarn was skillfully spun, very smooth and beautiful. Well, the dear mother was conflicted between the joyful shock she felt to see the 7 skeins of yarn completed, combined with her anger that all of the saucers were eaten. Overwhelmed by her emotions, the woman ran into the street yelling, "My daughter's spun 777. My daughter's eaten 777." Over and over she called this into the streets until the local young laird rode by. Confused by her exclamation, the laird approached her and said, "Good wife, what is the matter?" There's the laird. The Lord speaks to the mother of a peasant home. An illustration by Herbert Cole for Tom Tit Tot. The woman repeated, "My daughter's spun 777. My daughter's eaten 777." Seeing the laird's confused expression, the good wife said, "Well, come see for yourself if you don't believe me." When the laird entered the good wife's home and saw the 7 skeins of yarn, He marveled at the industriousness of a young woman who could spin so much so quickly, and asked the good wife to meet her daughter. When our maiden appeared in the doorway, the laird was smitten on the spot by the rustic beauty of the young peasant girl. He declared right then that he was so lonely without a wife, and had long been in search of a girl who was as a good spinner. He asked her hand for her hand, and they were married very soon thereafter. The young bride was afraid that he might discover that she was not quite as adept at spinning as he had thought, but she stifled his worry, because who would look a gift horse in the mouth? But soon enough the laird asked his new wife why it was that she had not resumed her spinning. Quite vexed about what to do, the girl went again to the rock beside the stream and placed her head in her hands and began to cry. And soon old Habitrot appeared to her again. Now, whether the good dame who was so famous in the borderlands was so kind to all lazy girls is very unlikely, but she took a liking to this one, and so she would not let her down. "Bring your bonny bridegroom to see me, lass," she said to the girl, "and when he sees what's come of the spinning, he'll never tie you to the spinning wheel." And so the next morning the young bride led her husband into the flowery knoll beside the stream, and asked him to look into the hole in the witch's stone. The laird was in for quite a shock, for inside the stone he saw old Habitrot dancing and jumping around. The old the other old crones sat at their spinning wheels, keeping time with their spindles, while Habitrot sang, "We who live in a dreary den are both rank and foul to see, hidden from the glorious sun that teems the fair earth's canopy. Ever must our evenings lone be spent in the Colliody stone, cheerless in the evening gray, when Cosline hath dried away, but ever bright and ever fair are they who breathe this evening air and lean upon this witch's stone, unseen by all but me alone." When the song had ended, Scantly Mab asked Habitrot what she meant by her last line, "unseen by all but me alone." Habitrot replied, "There is only one whom I bid to come at this hour, and he has heard my song through the witch's stone." After she said this, she stood up and opened a secret door that was hidden in the roots of an old tree. Waving at the young couple, she invited them to come inside and see the family of old ladies. The laird was quite astonished at the weird-looking women, as anyone might be. So he asked them one by one what was the reason that their lips were so distorted. One by one, each one answered that the spinning was the reason that their lips were malformed. Or at least they tried to, but they had such difficulty pronouncing the words that each one could only mumble and gesture. But the laird got their meaning. After the last was spoken, Habitrot slyly hinted that if this young wife were allowed to spin, then her pretty lips would grow out of shape too, and her beautiful face would become ugly. So before they left the cave, the laird insisted that his little wife would never again touch a spinning wheel, and he kept his word for all his days. The young lady spent her days wandering in the meadows by his side, or riding beside him over the hills, and all of the flax that was grown on his land was sent to Habitrot, who happily converted it into yarn. La Belle Dame Sans Merci by Arthur Hughes. Thank you for listening. There's another part to this book, and then at the beginning, there's a lot of explanation about European folklore, and about the meanings behind these stories. So stay tuned for the second part, which is, see, it's a wood maid, the wood maiden, pardon me, the wood maiden, a Czech fairy tale. Thanks again. Bye.